Ancient Greece was not a single unified world. It was a collection of city-states that shared languages and gods but lived completely different lives. And among them, the most extreme and misunderstood was Sparta. Sparta was not just another Greek city. They had an entirely different idea of what human life should be. While most of Greece developed art, philosophy, trade, and political systems, Sparta developed one thing above everything else: war. And everything else was built around that one single purpose. They believed a strong society comes from discipline, control, and survival, and nothing else. In Sparta, life didn't begin with freedom. It began with inspection at birth. Elders would inspect the baby as soon as it was born. Weakness wasn't romanticized or worked on. It was rejected. A child considered unfit might be abandoned on the slopes of Mount Taygetus. Harsh. But in the Spartan worldview, the strength of the state depended on the strength of everyone within it. For those who were accepted, early childhood still wasn't soft. Until about age 7, boys technically were raised at home. But even that home life wasn't indulgent, as mothers in Sparta were famously strict. They were expected to raise sons who were resilient, not pampered. Even toys were shaped towards toughness, less imagination-driven, more physical control, endurance, and competition. At around age 7, everything changed. This is where the system known as the Spartan Agoge began. The Agoge was a state-run training system designed to turn boys into soldiers first and individuals second. Once a boy had entered it, he effectively became property of the state. He was grouped with other boys his age and placed under strict supervision. Clothing was minimal. Comfort was reduced on purpose. Even seasons didn't change expectations. Winter didn't mean warmth, it meant adaptation. Boys were often given one cloak for the whole year and shoes were optional. The idea was simple. If you could endure discomfort early, you would not break later. Food was another major tool for discipline. Boys were deliberately underfed not to starve them but to force adaptation. Hunger was expected, so was learning how to steal food. That might sound strange, but in the Spartan worldview, stealing wasn't just tolerated, it was part of training. The catch? You had to be clever enough not to get caught. If you were caught, the punishment wasn't for stealing itself, but for failure. It was a lesson in stealth, intelligence, and consequences under pressure. As they grew older, training intensified. Physical exercise dominated daily life. Running, wrestling, combat drills, and group coordination. But it wasn't just physical. Psychological pressure was constant. Boys were encouraged to compete and to respond without emotional collapse. Speech was also tightly controlled. Spartans valued brevity. This is where laconic speech comes from, named after Laconia, the Spartan region. Boys were trained to speak little, and only when necessary. Long explanations were seen as weakness or lack of control. As they entered adolescence, the system became even more intense. They were often organized into groups that functioned like small military units. Loyalty was built within the group, but always under the supremacy of Sparta. Bonds formed were deep, but always disciplined. Older youths were sometimes assigned younger boys to mentor or dominate, depending on interpretation. The goal was to create hierarchy, obedience, and resilience under authority. And throughout all of this, there was a constant undercurrent. Failure was not private, it was public. Every weakness was visible, every mistake a lesson, not just for the individual, but for the group. By the time a Spartan male reached adulthood, he wasn't trained in the way we think of education today. He had been reshaped. His identity was not centered on personal ambition or comfort, but on endurance, loyalty, and combat readiness. So when you step back and look at it, a Spartan child didn't transition from childhood to adulthood on a gentle slope. It was more like being dropped into a system designed to remove softness early so what remained could survive anything. But Sparta was not only shaping boys into soldiers. When the boys were inspected, tested, and pulled fully into the system of the Agoge, another question naturally appears. What about the girls? Because in most ancient societies, women were confined at home, trained only for silence and obedience. Sparta was different. Spartan girls were still shaped by the same philosophy. Strength was not optional, it was necessary. From a young age, they were encouraged to run, to wrestle, to throw, to compete physically, not for war, but for something just as important in Spartan thinking: future motherhood. Because in Sparta, a strong society required strong mothers. These women were expected to grow into the foundation of the state. They were educated and outspoken. A Spartan woman was expected to raise sons who would not fear death. Marriage did not happen early in childhood, as in some other cultures. Instead, Spartan women often married in their late teens or early 20s, once their bodies were considered strong enough and their role in society ready to begin. And when they became mothers, their identity shifted into something very specific. They were not just raising children. A Spartan mother was not meant to grieve weakness. She was expected to reinforce strength, even in loss. When a Spartan would go to war, the final words he would hear from his mother were "Itan I epitas," which translates as either with it or on it, meaning return victorious with your shield or return dead carried on it. So when we look at Sparta as a whole, we start to see something deeper forming. This was not just a system that trained boys into warriors. It was a society that engineered both halves of life, men and women, around the same idea: survival through strength, identity through discipline, and purpose through sacrifice. And now, with both the boys hardened through the Agoge and the society itself built to reinforce that mindset, Sparta had created a civilization where nearly every aspect of life was designed for war, obedience, and collective survival. But Sparta's story doesn't unfold in isolation. On the other side of the Aegean, a different kind of power was rising. One built not on discipline through scarcity, but on overwhelming abundance. That was the Persian Empire under King Xerxes. By the time he appears in history, Xerxes is not just a ruler of a kingdom. He is the ruler of one of the largest empires the ancient world had ever seen. From the Middle East to parts of Asia Minor, vast territories were already under Persian control. Cities paid tribute, armies were gathered from across continents, and the idea of resistance was usually temporary at best. But Sparta and the Greek city-states represented something different. Not just independence, but defiance. The tension between Persia and Greece didn't begin with Xerxes. It had already been sparked earlier during the Ionian revolts, where a smaller Greek force had managed to humiliate a much larger empire on familiar ground. And that memory mattered, because for Persia, especially for a ruler like Xerxes, empires don't forget resistance. They respond to it. So for Xerxes to move west is not just expansion, it is correction. A demonstration of power meant to restore authority over a region that had once embarrassed the empire. When something far larger starts coming toward them, Greece's internal city-state rivalries start fading. What divides them becomes far less irrelevant than what threatens them all. And among those city-states, Sparta stands out not because it's the largest or it's the richest, but because it is the most unyielding. So when Xerxes marches into Greece, he is not simply facing a scattered resistance. He is about to collide with a society that has turned discipline into identity and sacrifice into duty. And if Xerxes represents the weight of an empire, then Sparta responds in a very different way. Not with size or numbers, but with leadership shaped by the same system that created its soldiers. That leader was King Leonidas. He wasn't a marble statue sitting above Sparta. He was built inside it. From childhood, his life was discipline, repetition, and endurance. No comfort, no individuality. Just training and control. Even as a king, that didn't change. Spartan rulers didn't live above their soldiers. They stayed within the same system, judged by the same standard. How well they held under pressure. In Sparta, leadership wasn't distance, it was participation. Everything in his life followed the same logic. Family, duty, identity. All of it served the state. All of it reinforced through discipline. So when Leonidas acted, he didn't act as a distant ruler. He acted as a Spartan, trained to respond without hesitation. And that system was about to be tested at Thermopylae. When Leonidas wouldn't just lead Sparta, he would embody it. Now we are at the edge of the moment, but not inside the battle yet. Before Thermopylae becomes blood and legend, it begins with something quieter. A message. Across rising tensions between Persia and Greece, King Xerxes sends envoys ahead of his massive army with a simple demand. Submit, lay down arms, accept Persian rule. It is the standard language of empire, war avoided through expectation rather than force. The messenger arrives in Sparta and delivers the order, but Sparta does not treat it as negotiation. Under King Leonidas, it's a test of identity, not diplomacy. Surrender isn't a choice, it's a contradiction of what Sparta is. The demand is clear: give up your weapons. Leonidas' answer is even clearer. 2 words: molon lave. Come and get them. Not a speech, not a threat, just finality. Those words don't just reject the demand, they redefine it. Surrender is no longer something given, it must now be taken by force. When the messenger returns to Xerxes, the message is clear: this city will not bend. It must be broken. From here, the story is no longer about messages between kings. It becomes about what happens when words end and contact begins. The war is coming west. On one side, the army of Xerxes, a force assembled from across a vast empire with numbers believed to be around 300,000 soldiers, overwhelmingly larger than anything the Greeks could match in a single field battle. On the other side, Greece is fragmented. City-states that argue, compete, and rarely agree on unified command. Athens, Sparta, Corinth, each driven by different priorities and different fears. And yet a decision is made, because if Persia moves freely into central Greece, the war is effectively over before it even begins. So the Greeks choose a choke point, the narrow coastal pass of Thermopylae, a place where numbers matter less and terrain becomes the equalizer. But not everyone agrees on how to respond. Inside Sparta itself, even within its ruling structure, there is tension. The religious authority in Sparta, the ephors, is constrained by tradition and ritual timing. According to Herodotus, Sparta is also observing the festival of Carnea, a sacred period during which full military mobilization is restricted. This is where Leonidas makes his decision. He does not wait for perfect conditions, he does not wait for full political alignment. Instead, he takes what he can and turns it into a statement. Leonidas leads a small advance force north. The famous 300 Spartans are his personal royal guard, elite Spartan hoplites chosen from men who already had sons, ensuring their family lines would continue even if they did not return. But they are not alone. As Leonidas moves towards Thermopylae, other Greek contingents join him along the way or already arrive at the pass. The total Greek force at the height of the pass is commonly estimated at around 7,000 men, including 300 Spartans, around 700 Thespians who famously stayed until the end, 400 Thebans, and thousands of other allied Greek hoplites from various city-states. They are not a single unified army in a modern sense, but they are a coalition held together by necessity, geography, and timing. Meanwhile, Xerxes' army advances slowly but steadily through northern Greece using sheer scale as its strategy. Towns fall or submit, refugees move south. The psychological weight of the Persian advance is almost as powerful as its military presence. And then Thermopylae becomes the meeting point. A narrow strip of land between mountain and sea, so tight that the advantage of numbers collapses. Only a limited front can fight at once. Armor, training, discipline suddenly matter more than scale. Leonidas does not position his men to win a long war, he positions them to hold the line, because that is what Sparta understands better than anything else. Not how to expand endlessly, but how to endure when everything is pushing against you. And when Xerxes realizes what stands in his way, the expectation is simple, probably. This force should break quickly, he thinks, but what he meets instead is a wall of men who were not sent to negotiate, not sent to retreat, and definitely not sent to calculate survival. They were sent to hold. The sheer number of Xerxes' army is about to collide with the physics of a narrow pass and find out that not every obstacle yields to pressure. The Persians didn't just hit a line of soldiers, they hit a machine. Imagine the physics of it. Thousands of men charging at full speed, only to slam into a locked grid of bronze. The Spartan phalanx doesn't move back, it leans forward. The choreography is a piston, shield, stab, step. From above, the Persian army is an ocean, but the pass is a needle's eye. The Persian numbers become their own enemy, their own weight crushing the front lines against a wall that refuses to budge. The Persian army, despite its scale, cannot fully surround them inside the bottleneck. And when the first assaults begin, the shock is immediate. Wave after wave of Persian infantry pushes forward and wave after wave gets driven back. The Greeks rotate fighters, maintain formation, and use the terrain exactly the way Leonidas intended. Persian soldiers fall in huge numbers trying to force through a space too narrow for their army to breathe properly. For days, the line holds. And that matters because Thermopylae is not only physical resistance, it is psychological resistance. The idea that Persia can simply overwhelm anyone by size alone begins to crack. At one point, Xerxes reportedly becomes furious enough to send in his elite force, the Immortals, Persia's most feared royal troops. Even they struggle to break through. As the hours turn into days, the clean geometry of war begins to fracture. This is where the training of the Agoge takes over. The air is thick with the smell of copper and salt. Wood splinters, bronze dents. The Spartans rotate their ranks with the precision of a clock. When the man in front tires, he slips back and a fresh shield takes his place. It's a meat grinder. Xerxes watches from his throne as his finest troops are systematically disassembled by a force that doesn't know how to fatigue. Until Ephialtes of Traches. Thermopylae does not fall from the front. It falls from betrayal. A local Greek named Ephialtes, which literally translates to nightmare, reveals a hidden mountain path to the Persians, a route around the pass that allows Persian forces to move behind the Greek position. And suddenly, everything changes. Leonidas learns that they are about to be surrounded. Some Greek forces withdraw after learning the pass had been compromised, others remain. But Leonidas and his Spartans stay alongside the Thespians, who chose voluntarily not to leave, and a smaller remaining force of allies. When the Persians finally move behind them, the wall doesn't break, it simply turns. They retreat to a small hillock and the choreography shifts from a machine to something primal. Spears are gone, swords are shattered. They are now fighting with their hands and teeth. The discipline they learned as children, the endurance, the silence, the rejection of pain, it all culminates here. They aren't fighting for a win anymore. They are fighting for legacy. But a wall is only as strong as its foundation. In the middle of the red mist and the scream of iron on bronze, the foundation breaks. Leonidas falls. He doesn't die in a quiet corner of the battlefield. He falls in the very front, buried under the weight of the empire he defied. In that moment, the battle stops being about a pass or a war or a king. It becomes something primal. The Spartans don't retreat. They surge forward, not to save their lives, but to save his body. They fight with a desperate, terrifying ferocity, driving back the Persians 4 separate times just to keep their king from being desecrated. Around his fallen form, the last of the 300 transform. They are no longer soldiers following orders. They are the ghosts of the Agoge, finishing the work they were born for. Eventually, the weight of the empire is too much. The circle breaks. The spears fall silent. Militarily, Persia wins. The pass is cleared. Thermopylae falls. Leonidas is dead. Xerxes marches south to watch Athens burn, believing he has broken the spirit of the West. But he was wrong. He didn't realize that in the narrow dirt of that pass, he hadn't just killed men, he created martyrs. Thermopylae gave Greece the one thing an empire cannot fight: proof that the god king could bleed. Back in Sparta, there were no grand funerals. There was only a grim, silent recognition. Leonidas had done exactly what Sparta raised him to do. He held the line until there was no line left to hold. For Sparta, Thermopylae was a defeat, but for history, it became immortality. Welcome to Kronvault.